the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you do the roll call for us?
Sure. Deputy Mayor Robin?
Present.
Dan Patterson?
Here.
Cal Ellis is away on vacation. Frank Mott?
Here.
Ray Morrison?
Here. Our next item is public comment. Okay. First, we have Frank DiGregorio.
I want to read this into the record, and then I'll have a copy for the clerk. For the record. I submitted a letter to the Exeter Town Council listed on the communications section verifying my position as the Exeter Planning Board's designated representative with respect to the Exeter's opposition to the Rolling Greens development. That letter also stated multiple violations of the Exeter Code of Ethics and Conduct Policy by Exeter Town Council member Daniel Patterson as it relates to that issue. During a North Kingston Town public hearing, Councilor McKay objected when I was, as the designated representative of the Exeter Planning Board, began my public testimony in support of North Kingston's proposed amendment to limit the commercial aspect of the Rolling Greens development. Additionally, Councilors McKay and Costa claimed to possess an email covertly misstating the fact that I represented the Exeter Planning Board in support of Exeter's opposition to the Rolling Greens development. When asked by Councilor Kevin Maloney, neither Councilor McKay nor Costa produced the email or named its author or authors. However, Councilor Costa did refer to Exeter Councilors Patterson and Morrissey, who were present, that neither responded. That email was authored by Mr. Patterson, and it undermined Exeter's official representation to defend the comprehensive plan as it relates to preserving Exeter's rural character against the dangers of commercial sprawl presented by the Rolling Greens development. For what purpose was that email sent? Was it authorized by the Exeter Town Council? And why was it only sent to Ms. Costa and Mr. McKay, opposed to the entire North Kingston Town Council? Who else on the Exeter Town Council were involved, supportive or aware of this collusive endeavor? The Exeter Town Council recently enacted a Code of Ethics and Conduct policy that the council obviously felt is a relevant and needed policy. Mr. Patterson's apparent colluding with Ms. Costa to the detriment of the town of Exeter's future development constitutes a serious violation of Exeter's Code of Ethics and Conduct policy. In accordance with the requirements of the Code of Ethics and Conduct of paragraph 3.C.8, I was obligated to report these violations as delineated in my letter to the Exeter Town Council. Mr. Patterson's actions have caused serious damage to the credibility of the town of Exeter, the Exeter Planning Board, its representatives, and defamed me personally. It is my unwavering opinion that these breaches of the Exeter Code of Ethics and Conduct policy and knowingly undermining the defense of our comprehensive plan in a public forum warrant the highest possible disciplinary action possible.
All right,
I look forward to your reply and timely action by the Exeter Town Council in addressing this very serious issue. Thank you.
next we do have Dan Patterson.
For the record, Dan Patterson, 332 South County Trail, Exeter. As I read Mr. DiGregorio's letter demanding council take action against me, I find it rather amusing. In fact, after reading it, one thought comes to mind. I might add, this is strictly my personal opinion. I question his sanity. Mr. DiGregorio's letter is baseless. He is demanding a private email between two private individuals. Therefore, Mr. DiGregorio's claims have no merit. But let's look at some of his claims and actions of the past couple of years. Just in this letter alone, he references himself as the designated representative to the Exeter Planning Board 11 times in a 2.5-page letter. Mr. DiGregorio refuses to comprehend who runs this town. It is the elected town council, not Mr. DiGregorio. In fact, This council is designated in a formal vote. Council president will govern as the authorized liaison for the Rolling Green project, not Mr. DiGregorio. Since the Rolling Green development was submitted a few years ago, Mr. DiGregorio has aligned himself in a political charade involving residents in North Kingston under the guise of being the alleged representative for Exeter. In fact, when you look at the proposal for Rolling Greens, it mirrors the Exeter Village concept to a T. For anyone unfamiliar with the Exeter Village concept, one of its chief proponents and architects was Mr. DiGregorio. It's my understanding elements of the compact village development are to be included in our upgraded comp plan. Mr. DiGregorio, not being content with his opposition to Rolling Greens, then started on an alleged preferred developer in North Kingston. While doing research on this preferred developer, it turns out he was attacking a 3-lot subdivision near Elm Grove Cemetery in North Kingston, more than 5 miles from the Exeter town line. The preferred developer built a house for his daughter, son, and a duplex for investment. I might add that this family has owned that land for over 50 years. On to the next episode with Mr. DiGregorio. Tarbox Motors, relentlessly attacking this project, signing letters to the local newspaper as the Exeter Planning Board, implying he was representing Exeter. The Tarbox family is a third-generation family business employing well over 100 people in North Kingston with well-paying jobs. I could go on for over an hour, but I know my time is limited, so in closing, I have one question for Mr. DiGregorio. Are you using your seat on the Exeter Planning Board for personal financial gain? 2, and this is again my personal opinion. With Mr. DiGregorio's escapades in the last couple of years, it is apparent he no longer has the best interest for Exeter as a member of the Exeter Planning Board. Therefore, I ask Mr. DiGregorio to resign from the Exeter Planning Board so someone who has the town's best interest can be appointed. That's all I have to say on the matter.
And that was it for public comment. Move on to the next item. We have acknowledgements and announcements. Is there any announcements by the council?
I would like to just recognize a date. Pearl Harbor is a U.S. naval base near Honolulu, Hawaii. It was the scene of a devastating surprise attack by Japanese forces on December 7th, 1941. Just before 8 a.m. on that Sunday morning, hundreds of Japanese fighter planes descended on the base, where they managed to destroy or damage nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 enormous battleships, over 300 airplanes. More than 2,400 Americans died in the attack, including civilians, and about 1,000 people were wounded. The day after the assault, President Franklin D. Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan. I just want to recognize that as Americans. Thank you.
Is there acknowledgements or announcements?
Acknowledgements. I'll give a quick one. Thursday night here, we had the Christmas tree lighting, the 7th annual one, that all the town employees put together, and they did a fantastic job.
The cookies were great, John, right?
Yeah, we have Santa.
Santa was there too, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda order as presented? Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next we have the consent agenda. We had a Reynolds Trust, so we did have a voucher this one.
Communication number 20.
Number 20. Is there any other reports anybody would wish to remove for discussion? Communications, Frank, we'll start with you.
Article number 11. Number 30 and number 31, please.
Right?
Frank took mine. Did you ask me? Did you ask me?
Yeah, did.
No.
Okay.
I have 25 and 28.
I also would like to pull number 14. Anybody want to pull the schedule for meetings for December as well as for 2018, or any of the employee holidays? Any discussion? You're all here for the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
I'll second.
Is that motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Vacancies and appointments, Linda, nothing for the A?
No, nothing.
Any resignations this month?
No.
Appointments, 1, Board of Canvassers, alternates 2. So we're appointing 2 alternates to the Board of Canvassers. We had a letter from the Exeter and Democratic Committee and the Exeter Republican Committee. Any discussion on who they'd like to appoint?
I'll go first, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
With regards to the Republican Town Committee, I received 2 correspondence, which I believe all of us did, from Miss Diane Allen, who's the chairwoman. And she said in her correspondence that one of the names to be removed off the list was Mr. Edward Natalie, who removed his list. And he said that Ms. Fran Whitford had the most computer experience, in her opinion, out of all the people that put in letters of interest. So I would make a motion to appoint Fran Whitford as an alternate to the Republican Town Committee.
Is there a second? I'll second that. Is there any discussion on the appointment? I know she was recommended by the chair of the Exeter Republican Committee because of the most computer skills, which they did state to us was a key concern. So-
Correct. The other one is the Democratic.
Yeah, okay.
Do I guess accept it?
All separate.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We did also, like you stated, we have a letter from the Democratic Committee, Bob Johnson. He's recommended Gertrude Charbonneau of 595 Ten Rod Road. I'll make a motion that we appoint her. He only gave us one name.
I'll second.
Any discussion? We did reverse, we'll appoint one from each political party, so I think this covers us there, so. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next, we have the Exeter Rural Land Preservation Trust Committee. We had a resignation from that committee. Do we have any? I'll make a motion that we continue to post that.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So next we have number 8, public hearings. I'll make a motion that we enter the public hearing for Lynn Hall, applicant, president of the Boulder Dash LLC, 53 Beacon Drive, North Kingstown, Rhode Island. Boulder Dash Color Run with obstacles on the trails, Saturday, May 12, 2018, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Camp Canonicus on Exeter Road in Exeter.
I'll second.
All in favor? Is the applicant here tonight? I have another.
I have another. Didn't get my act together last month.
Oh.
We're on the same one.
That's what I thought, wait a minute, there's another one going on. So is this the same thing, kind of set
Yeah,
up, or?
Except for
different?
throw color,
So what?
basically. It's the only difference is we throw color.
Throw color? Okay.
What that means.
Colored powder.
All right, any questions from the council regarding the event? All fees paid up to date, Lynn?
There's $137.78 owing in advertising and certified mail.
Anybody sign up for public comment from the public? None? All right, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then I'll make a motion to grant the license to the applicant, subject to the condition of the payment being made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good luck with your event.
Thank you.
Next, we have the proposed amendments to the Exeter Code of Ordinances, zoning, appendix A, article 11, renewable energy, section 11.2, wind energy conversion systems and zoning, appendix A, article 2, zoning district use regulations, section 2.4.1, use category number 79, wind energy conversion systems. Alright, so I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have before us a change, this is from the planning board.
10 minutes ago, and I've already lost it.
Yeah, looks like this right here.
We got one.
Just gave it to me, I lost it already.
I know what that's like.
Wonder what I did with it.
Yeah, you just got it.
Still up, I can't even find it in the stack.
Actually, would you like to speak to the ordinance? We have any requirement if we don't do this.
So the draft you have before you was, gone through the planning board. They've been through it several times, they worked off of an old draft, and made some updates on some new research that we did, and, this is the draft that we have sent to the planning board, to the town council for consideration.
Do you have any questions on it, or?
We're here to, and there's several members of the board that are here, and I'm here to answer any questions of the, town council and the public.
Okay.
It's been laying out there in limbo since 2011. I would just move it, schedule a public hearing for it.
This is the public hearing.
This is-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Brian?
Yes.
You guys have any questions regarding the ordinance before us?
Not specifically, Mr. President, no.
Moving to the members of the public, let's see. First, we have Gina Thurn. Call it, go up.
Hi, my name is Gina Thurn. I'm an Exeter resident. My husband and I own Arcus Farm on Gardner Road in Exeter. So you've seen us before. First, I just wanted to say that I support wind energy. I like it. I like renewable energy. I like wind. I like solar. They're good for the environment. They're good for the land. We picked up a copy of this draft at the town hall, and in reading through it, initially I look at it and I say, wow, that's great. It's a great proposal, it's a great ordinance. And then I start to reread it a second time, there are a couple things that I have to say I have some issues with. There are multiple spots within this ordinance that specifically reference visual impact. Not impacting scenic, natural, or historic resources. Looking at existing viewscapes, looking at screening. You're gonna see it. We drive up 102 into Coventry and West Greenwich all the time, and frankly, I think wind turbines are quite beautiful. I've always been a fan of the old-fashioned windmills, and I don't have a problem with seeing it. Just like I don't have a problem with seeing my farm, or seeing anybody else's farm. And I feel like there's a lot of the, it's okay, but as long as we can't see it, kind of mentality throughout this proposal, which I have to say I take offense to. Wind is good. It's a heck of a lot better than coal or nuclear power or any of the other smokestacks on other power plants. And Exeter has an opportunity as a town to be a leader in renewable energy. And instead, we've had a moratorium, which essentially was a ban on wind for, I counted back 7 years, in town agendas. Then I got bored with looking back. 7 years seemed like an awful long time to come up with an ordinance. So that was my first issue with this. I feel like there are numerous spots that we put way too much impact on what it is doing to our scenic outlet. It's a heck of a lot better to see that than to see a smokestack. I would love to see a winter.
You brought, the first comment you made, what was about visual?
Yes. In the purpose of this draft, you mentioned scenic and visual stuff, you mentioned, let's see, page 5. Under the preliminary plan, you mentioned existing viewscapes, not changing existing, how it will affect existing viewscapes. You also specifically mentioned looking at the, just below that, include photos of pre-construction, post-construction simulations, and the view shall be within a 2-mile radius of the proposed site, which seems excessive, given that other local towns look at the viewpoint from 500 feet. 2 miles is over 10 times that requirement, which seems a little ridiculous. 2 miles is as a crow flies from here to my farm through the woods. Just as a point of reference. The other thing I have to say with wind that I support as a farmer, I love land. And while I support both wind and solar, wind takes up a hell of a lot less land. The footprint for a wind turbine is significantly less than the footprint for a solar field, which means that land still can stay in production. And it also has the opportunity of being dual use. You're not eliminating the use of a field that's used for farming or something else when you put up a wind turbine, as you would with a solar field. So I think wind is a good thing. But finally, as I get to the very end of this, and I gotta be honest, this is the part that burns me, is the zoning draft box at the end of where wind would be permitted. And I'm looking at commercial wind here, to be honest with you, because I think that is where the dollars are gonna come into play for a landowner to say, I can make some money off of this to help support my land, to help pay my taxes. But it would not be permitted in residential 2, rural 3, or rural 4.
Which
How-
all farms
Which is
classified
all
under
farms.
RU4.
Exactly. So if I'm a landowner that has 50 acres, 100 acres, even 10 acres, in any of those zoning districts, I still can't do this because it would not be permitted, which takes any option that I have for helping make a farm economically viable off the plate. Nope, sorry, can't do it. That burns me. But at the same time, it would be permitted in CR5, B, LBR, LI, OSPL, and
Groundwater
GW.
overlay district.
All the overlay districts, all the town-owned land. So you guys can put up a wind farm and you guys can generate some money from it, but I as a tax-paying town member can't. I've got a problem with that. I don't think it's fair. I think it eliminates a lot of the best sites for wind, and it's a backdoor way of banning wind turbines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we did have Lauren Thorne.
Lauren Thurn, also from Gardner Road, the other half of the team, I guess. Again, the feeling as I look at it, I applaud the effort to try and do something to make wind an option in this town. I think it'd be a great idea, but definitely have some reservations as I look at this. As a starting point, and this one I guess is more general housekeeping, on page 1, and if I can find where we have page 1, section 3, definitions. Under letter C, utility scale wind energy systems, wind energy system, conversion system that is freestanding tower greater than 100 kilowatts and developed with electricity delivered to the power grid and distributed to the end user by electric utilities or power system operators. I suspect by the way that comes across, it's missing something, because I feel I could interpret that as if I build a turbine of greater than 100 kilowatts, using a generator rather than utility power, it's not a utility scale system. I suspect it's intended to be, wind energy conversion system that is freestanding, tower greater than 100 kilowatts, and my words, intended to produce electricity, again my words, to be delivered to the power grid. I think that something of that nature is probably more intended. From there on to my problems with it, same issues my wife has. Okay, page 2, section 4 requirements, letter B, number 1, wind energy conversion systems have been constructed and operated in a manner that minimizes any adverse visual, safety, and environmental impacts. Any adverse visual. Very subjective and almost impossible to enforce. And yes, feel like it makes it, we put a nice ordinance out, but it's actually prohibiting everything. And then to the 2 mile radius, it is mentioned on, let's see, page 4, 5, section 6B, number 1, small letter I, number 1, the location map, and again on page 5, section 6, letter B, number 2, small letter I, number 1, requiring a 2 mile site radius. To go beyond what my wife said, 2 mile radius from this town hall is almost down to Town Hall Road to the west of us, almost out to New Road on the east of us, past Sheffield Hill, almost down to the campground on Liberty Church Road, and over the town line into West Greenwich, almost up to the Henry Brown Road in West Greenwich. Very excessive. I pull up a copy of the Coventry's ordinance, and they require 500 feet from the town, the property lines. And I definitely support wind. I do not feel that it's necessarily the most beautiful thing, but again, do not feel that smokestacks, cooling towers, any of the other type of power plants are beautiful either. Definitely do not wish to go back to a point in our history where we do not have electricity to work with. Do not want to have to come home and light whale oil lamp. Don't wish to see that come back. If we wish to have these things, I think our town needs to step up and say we accept that not everything is perfect. There are downsides to it. We need to accept our part of the downsides if we wish to have our part of the benefits. And permitting these things in our town will help us to go forward with this and be a leader in how to have renewable energy. Just some real quick figures on setbacks. And support the setbacks, don't have a problem with it, but at 1.25 times the height of a tower, a 400-foot tower, that'll put you 500 feet in both directions, 1,000 feet. 1,000 times 1,000 is 1 million square feet. Divided by 43,560 square feet in an acre, it gives you 22.96 acres of setback for a 400-foot tower. That's, you know, and then as we, I guess, from that point, looking at, well, maybe it should be in the city. Find a 22-acre parcel of land in the city that's economically viable to put in a turbine. I don't think you're gonna be able to do that. And I guess one last little comment I've heard as I've been in a couple of the planning committee meetings lately, talking about the solar, feeling that permitting solar on farm and forest land is not in compliance with the town comprehensive plan. I will also say then, if permitting something like this to be used on farmland, forest land, in order to try and keep a good part of that land open, if it's not in compliance with the comprehensive plan, taxing that land at a rate greater than what it is used for, which is forcing development of a lot of land, is also out of compliance with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Is there any comments from the planning board regarding the ordinance before us? The setback or the visual impairments?
I just can share with you the conversations that we had and the research that we did. The planning board looked at this, tried to look at this from a fairly neutral position, that not everybody is going to be in favor of wind and not everybody's going to want to look at a turbine. So they are permitted, they are required, most of them require a special use permit to try to make sure that they're not going to impact the neighborhood wherever they are in a negative way. The screening issue is simply for the abutting neighbors and the visual impact to the people who drive through and live in Exeter every day. This is not, there's a balance between allowing the landowner to profit from it and also protecting the community, and that's the planning board's job, is to look out for the health, safety, and welfare of the entire community. So they're trying to strike a balance between allowing for the erection of a turbine for the landowner to make a profit, but at the same time to make sure that everyone else that lives in town that maybe doesn't think it's beautiful or doesn't want to see it from 2 miles away, which if it's 400 feet tall, you will see it from 2 miles away, that they can take those things into consideration and that they can minimize the visual impact in every way possible. Not to stop it, not to prevent it, but to do what they can to minimize the impacts on everyone else. This is not about preventing turbines, like I said, this is about health, safety, and welfare for the entire community. That's the planning board's job. The planning board has never said that solar and wind don't belong on farms. They have talked about appropriate scales of solar and wind on farms, keeping farms operating at the same time as allowing them to make a return on an investment like that. The planning board is very much in favor of finding that balance. And it's not always an easy thing to do, but balance is what they are looking for. Balance is what we have tried to do with this ordinance. Give some allowances for turbines, and at the same time protect the rest of the community that is not benefiting from that turbine directly, and will have to see it as they drive through Exeter. And we are talking about 400 feet tall. Those are monster, those are big things. They are gonna be seen from a lot of different places and a lot of different locations. And the planning board is trying to do the best that they can to ensure that the impact is minimized. That has been the goal.
When we worked on this ordinance, there was a lot of discussion in town about the wind turbine in North Kingston. And as soon as you cleared some of the trees in Exeter, heading down 102, you saw that turbine. And most of the discussion was people that were really upset about the view. Of course, if you like it, you never hear anybody dancing saying, well, that looks great. You really only hear the people that say that looks terrible. But that is a lot of the talk that we were getting, and a lot of the visual impact stuff in the ordinance really was driven by people within Exeter looking at what they were looking at as they went down the road, and said, that's the last thing I want in my backyard. So that's what drove a lot of that language.
And we also did hear, like like Bill said, you don't get the feedback of, I love the way the turbines in Coventry look. We heard a lot of stuff about the problems in Coventry with those turbines and the issues that people are having that are living very close to them. And so, like I said, the main focus of the planning board was to minimize impacts as much as possible while still allowing for people to put up turbines.
I want to make one statement, and I have a question, because the company that built the turbine, this state back, I was on the council that issued this moratorium, Ray Morrissey was too, it was in 2011. And at the time, there was two reasons. The state was supposed to be coming out with rules and regulations, which they never did. And I remember the comment I made, let's watch them build the one in North Kingston, see what they make for mistakes, and don't do the same thing. My question to Mr. DePasquale was, how tall is that one in North Kingston?
The turbine in North Kingston is 414 feet for the blade. Most people measure every place but New England, measure to the nacelle, which is an 80-meter nacelle, a little over 260 feet. But to the tip of the grade blade from the ground is 414 feet. We talk about North Kingstown Green's turbine. Before the houses were built, it was put in, there was a group that targeted. We have a letter from the town regarding no complaints. So since the turbine's been up and running for 5 years, all the houses in the subdivision have sold for above market. We just closed on the last house. There's one bigger house, but we just closed on a 2,200 square foot house that sold at $545,000 with the train station, and it's 800 feet from the turbine.
I've got a couple more questions. Now, you didn't do anything with the ones in Providence and Fields Point.
No, I didn't.
How high are those ones, do you know?
Those turbines are little, so those turbines are on 70-meter towers. It's not a certified turbine. We're actually working on 2 more at Fields Point right now at the Port Authority. And because of the FAA, you have to build custom towers. So when you have a certification on the turbine, one of the most important things of an ordinance would be that it's certified by Turnock, and it's the largest certification. It's like UL listed. So those turbines, those towers were custom made shorter for a 70-meter. An 85-meter tower and a 100-meter tower are certified turbines. And the problem you have in this area is turbulence. So if you're at 60 to 70 meters, you have too much turbulence going across the landscape. So you really need an 85-meter tower. North Kingstown has a lot of turbulence on their turbine, so it's just dirty air. That's why in Europe, with the same windscape, they're higher than you would see here. So this North Kingstown turbine is the most built turbine across the world right now, that same exact design.
And then one last question. The ones that you see on 95 at New England Tech and at the nursing home across the street, how high are those?
Those are small. Those are probably, so those turbines really have, they were put in with grants. I would say Hannah, I apologize, but the young lady Hannah from my office actually permitted them, has been to every one of your planning board meetings for the last 3-4 years regarding, and Matt, which they're both in, they're away right now. Actually, Hannah will be back. She's looking at birds in Texas today. But she's been to every one of your meetings. I really wish she was here tonight to talk about the ordinance. But I would say those turbines are a little, because the FAA is a little bit over 200 feet to the tip of the blade there. They don't really produce energy, so they're not economically viable.
That was my next question. Basically, they're just producing probably just for the buildings that are there.
They actually aren't even buildings, so they're 250 kilowatt or 150. They just took the one down in Middletown, same type of technology. It's not a certified technology, and the economics don't really, you can't afford to really keep it up. So if you don't get a grant and you don't get free money from the EDC, they really don't produce energy. It'd be nice on an island for a small, and if you had one house, it's fine. But for the nursing home and for the New England Tech, it doesn't even do a fraction of their energy. And the only other little fact I would give you is we just started solar within the last year, but each turbine, it takes up 200 square feet. I haven't came to Exeter, I've listened, I'm trying to learn. I really think a real workshop where we sit down and have a few field trips and really look at what you're looking for. And that's what my staff would like to engage with the planning board to come up with something. 2 miles, so 500 feet, the people closest to the turbine don't usually see it. So if you go to Coventry, the people closest to the turbine don't see it, but the people in West Greenwich see it. There is a group in Coventry about noise. Decibel levels are met, and this ordinance says 55 decibels, so I'm assuming the noise ordinance in the town is 55. I think I recall it's 65, but I could be wrong. But it's very important that whatever the decibel level in the town is, it's the same for the wind. You can't have 2 different decibel levels. We all gotta be kept to one standard. Visually, if people don't like them, they're not gonna like them. So there is a group that has been probably 18 to 20 people, and they're upset that they see them in Coventry. We have done multiple noise studies and flicker studies, 30 hours a year, very reasonable on a receptor, not on a property line. So a receptor's a window. A fall zone, I will tell you, a 1 1/4 fall zone, I wouldn't argue. It would be the largest fall zone in the state. A 1-timer fall zone is more than sufficient, because the turbine's not gonna fall, jump, and hop to that extra. I wouldn't say that was really unrealistic, but the turbine in North Kingstown sits on 200 square feet. You need 19 acres of solar array to do it that 200 square feet. So when you hear a farmer talking about their land, you talk about a farmer that's raising corn, whatever it is, that's really the nice part about the wind. They can keep truly agriculture and what they're good at, not changing and trying to grow something different or try to raise different livestock under a solar array. I think the ordinance belongs in R3 and R4 because it's really where the farmers and them need it, but that's up to the planning and the council. But I think it could use some more work, and there's been multiple readings. We tried to get one the other day, the actual one that everybody's looking at, but I would love my staff to have some time to read through it and maybe work a little bit more on it.
I have one question for Providence. Providence must have some type of ordinance in effect.
So Providence, it's a special use permit. I'm going next week to 2 at the port, right near the college. So the dorms are 500 feet from the wind turbine. It's a special use permit for the height and for easements. So because the blades are turning over a walking park that they just put in, but it's allowed in that area. So that's why you see them.
It raises the question of the fall zone when I see those 3 in Field Point.
Yeah. So there isn't. So fall zone, there's not one turbine in Rhode Island that is actually built right now with a fall zone. Every turbine that's been permitted has been permitted with blade distance. So if you're your blade's 200 feet out, the blade can't turn over the property line. That's how every turbine right now is. There is no really fall zone that's been permitted at this time in the state. So none of the turbines would meet the guidelines that the state has put out, and haven't been certified, and they're not done. And none of the turbines in Portsmouth, the prime example is Portsmouth's turbine, it's up. You never really want residents on the north side of the turbine. Portsmouth has residents on the north. We paid their debt off, built them a new turbine. There hasn't been one complaint in Portsmouth for over a year and a half.
Was that the one at the high school?
The one at the high school, there was a gearbox. That's one of the reasons why. So it was an old style, it was a 1.5. Our turbine is actually a 1.5, but it's actually bigger than the one we took down. We don't have, so it's technology. It wasn't a certified turbine. Again, it was built in Canada. It was part of a Furlander design. They sold the license. They only built 4 of them. And right now, only 1 of them are running at about 25%. But the Portsmouth turbine, since it's been in operation, I was with the town manager and the council last week at a meeting, just looking at their savings on energy, has not had one complaint since the new one went up. Because no gearbox and because of that.
About the time that we talked about it, was 2011, when we talked about Portsmouth.
Yeah.
I think the one in Portsmouth was the first one, wasn't it?
Portsmouth, they were the pioneers. They went with the low bidder, and that was really their issue, and it wasn't certified. And you know, in an ordinance, the most important thing is the product that you're buying is a certified product. It's been tested, it's UL listed, and they have a record of success. The noisiest part of the turbine is the gearbox, and none of them that are in Rhode Island right now have gearboxes, except
They use two magnets if I.
it's a permanent magnet, correct. And regarding noise, all, if the turbines were exceeding the noise ordinance in Coventry, they would be shut off for the permitting, it's 65 decibels, but all 10 turbines running simultaneously at maximum production do not exceed 41 decibels.
There's 10 of them
There's 10 of them totally in Coventry, yeah.
in that one area.
And up on 117 on Flat River
I
Road.
was gonna say, you only see like 3, I think, when you go down.
You see most of them in, you see them in West Greenwich, and then as soon as you get to the site, you see them at the sawmill for a couple of minutes because it's open, and then as soon as you pass the sawmill, the turbines are right behind in the woods there. So the houses, in the area where it's more wooded, the people closer aren't gonna see them, but 2 miles away, like the one in North Kingstown, it's in my front yard, when you come down and you come over the hill in Exeter, you know, it's a distance, a viewpoint, so people farther away will see them than somebody closer to it.
That's how it is in Providence. I know I do business in Fields Point, so. Just a little side note.
Take a look, you know. Yeah, because Lawrence, in his wife's comments, the matrix, the important thing, because pretty much all your farmland in Exeter is RU4.
Do we make those changes?
Change it, because you've got what, special use permit to all the other ones.
Right, so change RU4 to.
2, 3, and 4, because that would be a special use permit too.
Change it all to S.
And then it was, probably take a look at what they've done with fall zones and other, like Providence and that actually.
I mean,
In the visual aspect, like they had asked.
with the comment on the visual, when I look at the section that was referenced, all it says is generally, they shall be constructed and operated in a manner that minimizes any adverse visual, safety, or environmental, so. And again, I know it's that language that's very ambiguous, but it could go for either side,
Yeah.
where it does, this project minimizes the impact, okay, well, so it's still passable, it doesn't say it has no impact, it just says it minimizes, and that could go, be argued by either side.
It doesn't, there's no requirement that says that you can't see it, we understand that's impossible. The idea was
I'm
that
thinking like an attorney, you just give them an inch and they're gonna go a mile, so.
the understanding
Sorry,
is
Jim.
the understanding, the understanding is with language like this, that we have to, the burden is on the applicant. They have to come in and show the planning board through the application process that these are the measures that we have taken to minimize the adverse visual, safety, and environmental impacts on the community. You know, the planning board is held to standards as well in a decision-making process. They can't arbitrarily just say, you know, visually it's too much. They have their own findings of fact that they have to make in a decision-making process. They can't just make an arbitrary decision. They have standards they have to meet in a decision-making process as well. So there's a burden on the applicant, but there's also a burden on the planning board in the decision-making.
Can I make one comment on that? Pastor? If it's interpretation, if you don't wanna see them, there's no possible way you can hide them.
No.
So if you need to be more exact on that. I will say right now, that 30 hours a year flicker is very acceptable. I was very happy to see that. I would personally stand here right now and say, a 1 1/4 times a fall zone, there are sites that can work. It's very difficult, but you should be able to allow to work with your neighbor for an easement. So if you can't, you can split, and it's happening in Johnson right now, they're splitting the lease payment, so they have that 1 1/4 for very, very reasonable. I won't sit here and say it would be the most stringent, but I'm not gonna sit here and tell the planning board it's not a good number. Noise needs to be the decibel. Those are the three major things in certification. It's gonna be UL listed, it's gonna be certified. That's everything on an ordinance, but to leave visual, we spent last week just putting some panels up and a lot of with shrubs and everything. You can do a lot with solar, and you can block it so you don't see it at all. But there's no possible way that if you don't like them, you're gonna see them. So, a offset with that could be distances, could be put in your ordinance. So one can't take away the wind from another, 8 or 9 times a rotor diameter, and that kind of spreads things out a little bit, might be something, but if it's visual, we're both gonna talk, I'm gonna say it's beautiful, and this gentleman here is gonna say it's ugly. It's a very tough standard to meet.
Usually, I have the holder. I was thinking of maybe we table this or continue the public hearing until January.
Yeah, I think so.
See if we can address some of the
Issues and come up with a solution that benefits everybody.
The intent of this ordinance was not to minimize wind.
Right, no,
Knock it down.
no, no.
Anyway, They were
Like I
just
said,
trying to
we
put it
it
in
was in
place.
2011, we did the moratorium, because at that time, the state was gonna do all the rules and regulations,
Right, yeah.
they never did anything.
Right, so we tried to put something in place that would bring solar in, but basically appease
All
the
the
surrounding
stakeholders.
people.
I think,
It's hard to do.
I think we have a really good draft here, I think just when we tweak it, I think we're in the ballpark. So I'll make a motion that we continue this to January, the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So, moving on to number 9, new business, personnel issues, labor negotiations,
Close the public hearing. Did you close the public hearing?
continued it, so we don't, it's actually closed. Personnel issues we need to discuss, or? All right. Item B, introduction, consideration, possible action, resolution extending the ordinance temporarily banning wind turbine installation and permits. So, as we were talking about, we do have our,
Right now, we do not have an ordinance in effect.
right.
Jim, your thoughts?
I think you probably should continue it, I mean, if you have the same.
Should you have a time frame on it?
Oh, sure. I mean, I would keep it in a pace with the ordinance that you're working on right now.
Something like 90 days, would that be sufficient?
I think it would be.
Does this have a shall, the period of 1 year from the date of this resolution, or until such time with the state, or until the town has adopted due diligence. All right. Yeah, so once we adopt the ordinance, it will supersede this, and then this gets nullified, right? So. That's me this time. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Do you need to read that into the record?
I think we just state that it's in the record, we have to actually read it, or just say, just introducing it.
It wasn't amended, right? We're just
No.
continuing it?
Well, this is the, yeah, we're just continuing, right? We're not
We're not
amending.
amending it.
Correct.
Right.
So a motion,
Go for it, Frank.
So moved.
second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next, a new hawker's license application for Walt A. Litton Senior, 483 Cribs Corner Road, Exeter. Applicant Walt's Hot Dogs, 900 Penrod Road, Exeter. So we have an application for us for a hawker's license at that location. Then we also have a communication from the tax assessor's office in zoning. No longer commercial property, right now it's an R2. Oh, sorry. RU4, sorry. So, that is That license is not permitted in that zone. Is he here this evening? So, were you aware about the zoning change?
About what? On the apartment,
On the property, right.
well, the papers that I had gotten, I don't have them with me, but, it said when the apartment was done, then I would have to leave it, because it would be residential. And I also, it was, something about the owner renewing the permit or whatever to be residential. If it wasn't done in a year, it would return to commercial. And of course, I don't know if he had or not. As far as I know, he hasn't renewed it.
He did file a appeal saying that he's no longer mixed use. So he's now going, saying that he, to the assessor, he's residential for tax purposes.
And there's he did the renewal for it to be residential.
Right, he did ask that it be changed over.
Rubber sheet on it, from board of approval, it made it residential use.
So residential use now. So you have to go to the zoning,
That's the opinion of the zoning inspector.
Yeah, the problem is that the zoning inspectors made a finding that there's been an abandonment of the use, and that it's now residential. And in order for you, quite frankly, in order for you to keep that alive, you need to challenge that particular rule. That's the finding of the zoning inspector, so it's really not, it's not the town council to reverse that. According to him, you don't have the zoning.
Yeah, because the way I understood it, if he didn't renew it in a year's time, that it would fall back to commercial.
Yeah, that call gets made by the zoning inspector,
Yep,
and that if you disagree with the call of the zoning inspector, you have to take his appeal to the zoning board. Okay, so that's what you have to check that out, and find out when was this. when was
November
this-
2nd, we're just checking the date.
Yeah, well, has anybody actually asked him for a zoning certificate on it? You might do that, because that might trigger them a right to appeal it if you
to the
don't.
planning board.
No,
Now, come in on Wednesday night at 7 and see
See
how
how.
the zoning inspector.
Oh, here,
yeah, and get a determination from him, you ask for it, and then he'll give you, it might be negative, it sounds like it's gonna be negative to you.
yeah,
But then you have an appeal right, the
Yeah.
zoning board review over his decision. And then you could get that all heard, or you can speak with him, he may change his mind, or he may have a different opinion. Okay?
Yeah.
But I think that's what you need to do.
because that's what I was wondering, if there was a deadline for the owner, you know?
Yeah, he'll be able to tell you that, it's really, that's an administrative thing that's in his law.
There was a few abandonments. So I think you're gonna do it Hal first and then come back to us. Continue this on this.
Yeah, continue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, to him coming back. The determination of how.
I found it later.
Moving on, next we have,
So, excuse me, do you know what to do, Walter?
Yeah, to come here on Wednesday night.
All right, we'll
That's
make
when all
sure
the
that.
inspectors are in session.
Yep,
That's when all the inspectors are in session.
Yeah,
It's here Wednesday night.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. All right,
okay.
yeah.
so, moving on. Next is introduction, consideration, possible action, the community development block grant application, funds for housing rehabilitation. Jeff Marshall, are you here this evening?
I am.
Come speak to us.
Want to block your camera. This is a little different from what you may be used to. Usually the state has a general application round once a year for all the money that's available. And they get vicinity of $5 million a year from HUD. This year, the only thing they're making available right now is housing rehab set-aside money, where actually you submitted an application and we're using the number 75,000. But once the environmental review is done, that'll result in a $0 contract. And then we can go to them house by house and then put the money into that contract to do the rehab. That's the only thing available right now, single family. There's two other set-asides, the state holds the money and we go for it. There's two other ones, one's affordable housing and one is economic development. Those, for some reason, are not immediately available, and the reason I'm hearing is they're on the forms developed. And then today, what the plan is, they'll hold $1 million aside. And they'll have a general round at some point in time when entities like the Domestic Violence Resource Center or the Welcome House or Education Exchange can come in and ask for money. I don't know when that will happen. Or if it'll happen. It'll happen, I guess, but not today. So right now, before you is an application for housing rehabilitation, set aside money in an approximate estimated value of $75,000. If we have more applicants, we can go for more. If we have less applicants, we don't need to use that money. They're not gonna reserve that money, it's first come, first served. It's just that HUD can't release $0, so we have to use an estimate. And that's what we use.
Now, you're being retired?
That, I believe, is another agenda item, but yes, I am retiring, I'm old now.
So
We
who would
won't
take
know.
over the program? You've worked out at East Greenwich for years, correct?
Yes, I've been in East Greenwich, I started with consortium in March of '96. I went to East Greenwich in July of '99. You guys joined in '97, I think, or maybe even '96. May 6, 1996.
So
Exeter
there's someone
joined.
stepping in to take your shoes, or?
Is that the second agenda item? I don't wanna get
Yeah.
tangled up.
Well, it kind of intertwines with this, because
Yeah, okay.
someone comes in here looking for a grant to fix something on their house.
Yeah,
They go to you, correct?
yes,
You do all the administrative,
Everything.
all the paperwork.
everything,
We don't do a thing.
nothing. You write the checks.
Thank you.
Because the money comes from the state to the town through the contractor that does the job based on, proper sign-offs and all that stuff. So yes, the money comes through the town, but I draw it down. I send a voucher to Maria, she writes a check based on the evidence I submit for that check, and that's it. That's your involvement. I do the quarterly reports, I draw the money down, I do the closeout report, I do the whole thing.
Now,
My plan, I'm not, this is my plan. You can buy into my plan, or you can not buy into my plan. My plan, I established a nonprofit back in 2005, the Washington County Community Development Corporation. A nonprofit affordable housing developer, anyway, makes money by building stuff. There's less and less money to do that with these days, so consequently, they're not making a lot of money. So they're constantly struggling with cash flow to keep the doors open. By moving the consortium into the Washington County CDC and having me hang around for a year after I retire to train, that enables them to access operating dollars for doing your programs. When you do a rehab, say you do a $10,000 rehab, you're eligible to receive up to $2,000 in operating. Now, you have to document to the state of Rhode Island that you've actually spent that $2,000 to get it. So if you can't, you don't. But, you know, we've developed a system over the last year and a half, 2 years, where we track everything. It's very, very exciting. And when a job is done, we get all our documentation together, and we add it up, and we come to a conclusion, and we bill up to the 2,000 or the 5,000, or whatever's available based on the value of the rehab. We bill that out, and they can make money. I believe, and I've convinced their board, and their board agrees with me, that will stabilize their operations, so they'll be available in a more stable way, to continue on.
Now, the type of money, the projects, are trailers eligible?
Yes, we've done several, we call it rehab of last resort. Back in June of 1976, HUD created standards for the construction of mobile homes, manufactured homes nowadays, trailers. Prior to that, prior to June of 76, there were no standards. A lot of them, I mean, no insult, they're beer cans on wheels. There's no energy efficiency, the plumbing is substandard. So we don't, the value of any rehab is generally more than the unit is worth. So as a rehab of last resort, we can put a new unit in there. We have 2 in Exeter. We actually went to bid on one of them. Unfortunately, the timing was such that we just had hurricanes in Texas and Florida. So FEMA was buying all the units. All the people that make these things are turning out units for FEMA, so they can house people whose homes were destroyed in those hurricanes. We're gonna, I'm told by one of the suppliers I work with, that in January, that should be all set, and they'll be accepting the orders. So I plan to rebid those units at that time. January. Just in time to retire.
So, say you get an applicant, a heating system, money's available for stuff like that, but not an emergency.
There are no, HUD doesn't,
Nothing moves slow.
no emergencies in HUD world.
But
You
these
know,
are the type of programs, someone needs help with a heating system, or they're
Roofs.
eligible,
Heating systems, roofs, septic systems, we've done them all.
and it's only $75,000 to do it.
No. We're asking them, because HUD won't release $0, we're estimating that we'll participate in this program to the value of 75. If we have $95,000 worth of application, fine, we can get 95. If we have only $25,000 worth of application, we'll only get 25. It's just a number.
They're just a ballpark figure.
Yeah, it's not like in the old days where they give you 30,000 and you're done for the whole year. It's a set aside at the state level, first come, first served, and it is, I'm gonna say, $2 to $3 million for this program.
What kind of strings are attached to it?
The usual regulatory stuff, lead-based paint, you have to comply. If you have a unit built pre-78, and you're gonna touch a painted surface, you have to have either assume lead paint exists and get a clearance on the other end, or have it tested for the presence of lead-based paint. I know a lot of the communities are a little nervous about HUD's affirmatively furthering fair housing. I can tell you that's a non-issue now with President Trump. He ain't gonna do that. In fact, you guys probably don't know, Westchester County in New York, that started all the, how the guy was invited out here. Yes, they built some units because they didn't perform up to HUD's expectations. They reported that they did. However, they built units. A new accusation from HUD is that they built them all in concentrations of low to moderate income people. And that was in and of itself a violation of fair housing. The administration told her to back off. That's been accepted, those units were accepted, they're in the clear. So it ain't gonna happen.
You do all the administration,
All of it.
you pay all the bills.
Well, I don't, she pays the bills.
She pays the bills.
When you sign the paper.
You
Gotta
hire,
climb the
you
stairs.
hire the
Nothing
contractors.
changes. No, the homeowners hire the contractors. The municipality has no authority to award jobs on private property. Everything I do, the homeowner signs off on it, and the homeowner signs a construction agreement with the contractor, not the town of Exeter or any other town.
Paint, that doesn't fall on us or our inspectors, does it?
No. No, you guys, you know, you're pulling permits.
Yeah.
Contractors pull the permits, you guys inspect. That's like anything.
No, like I said, I'm just looking at this.
Yeah, that's a
Dead
piece of,
tree here.
piece of paper, isn't it? Yeah, that's the environmental review.
Okay. I don't have any more questions, I won't throw them anymore.
So you retire, you don't have to climb the stairs anymore in East Greenwich Town Hall.
The only thing that kept me fit, I don't know what I'm gonna do now.
Oh, jeez.
Big staircase.
I'm gonna have to get a
Walk
stand
down to the harbor side.
I used to come down there a lot and sign
I
papers
know you did,
when I was president.
Yeah.
So, hearing no further questions, I'll make a motion that we grant the grant application presented. So moved. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Glenn, do you need them to read the resolution, or is that good? Good, okay, never mind, good.
I think reading the whole application might take us a little while.
No, not the thing, there's a model resolution in there that you could have read into the record, but
All right, and then next, we do have a presentation, discussion, possible action, the status of the East Greenwich Community Development Consortium, and possible alternative to continue the CDBG application management. So, we're back on that spot.
okay, well, I'm retired, end of January. The Washington County CEC, as I mentioned, has agreed to assume the duties that the town wanted to. I will say that there is a critical mass, you know, there's 10 towns in the consortium now. East Greenwich is having its own issues, they probably aren't gonna join. I don't know what Wesley's doing, they stopped talking to me, so there's 8 remaining. There needs to be enough members to justify the effort. Exeter and West Greenwich, they're not high participating communities. Richmond, South Kingstown, North Kingstown, Charlestown, those pretty good. You know, we're doing loans, we don't do a lot of loans. But I want you guys to stay in, because it helps the whole. Cash flow is only improved the more members you have. Simple business stuff. The manager now at the Washington County CEC, who's also retiring, they're in the process of a new hire, someone I have recommended. Of course, it'd be open free competition. I'm putting together a request for proposals that will hit the street, saying certain southern Rhode Island towns are interested in hiring an entity to manage this program. It's a hybrid RFP where you have to prove certain qualifications. You'd be competent to do that, and then there's a price for it. So that'll hit the street pretty soon. I will bring that back to you when those results are done, and we can make a final decision. What I really need, I think, tonight is some indication that it's of interest to you. So if somebody asks me, well, who's in this thing, I can say, well, so far these communities have expressed an interest, to be decided firmly later.
What are they gonna do, close down the East Greenwich Community Development Authority?
Yep.
Okay, so basically, the nonprofit's gonna be doing what?
The nonprofit will assume all functions and duties that I've been doing in this job,
Okay.
and I'll train them for up to 1 year, or longer. I don't think it'll take longer.
I mean, if you can bring us more detail, I'm open to looking at it.
Yeah.
I think well, I don't know if it's saying in the consortium.
Okay.
In one way or another. I mean, it seems like it's a good thing for our residents to be able to rehab their houses.
Yeah.
No cost to the town, no cost to the taxpayer, so.
Yeah. There are, we do loans, as I mentioned, you are getting loan payments. So someone has to service those loans. Your options, there's four options as I see it. Join in the consortium, decide to manage it yourself, hire somebody to do it for you, or don't participate in the program. It's really, that's it. I remember back, well, pretty well, Liliana Costa, when she was in your job, there was a break in management. South County Community Action used to do it, and I had not yet started the consortium. Liliana, I think, and Cal Ellis tried to run it, and boy, they didn't like it.
It's not easy. There's a lot of federal laws and regulations, and, we ourselves, we don't do anything per se, but we maintain 2 accounts. It's a highly audited items. The state can come at any time and audit the funds. We have a certain amount of turnaround time to get the funds out to you once we receive the funds. It's a lot.
Well, that's value. I've got, I think there's probably 6 to 8 applications pending right now that we have to get through this process before I can do anything with them. So there's people out there. I got a plastic tarp on one guy's roof now, leaking pretty good, and best I can do is put a tarp on it until this thing opens up, what this process is doing tonight. So, it has value to the people.
Okay.
But I'll bring you back some information when it's all in one spot, and we'll ask the real questions. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Continue on this further, to future agenda, Mr. President?
Yeah, we can continue. When do you think you'd have that information?
In a perfect world, I would like a new person to be available to start training on January 1st. But I don't know if I'll make it. But it'll be late December, early January. Are you amenable to a special meeting if necessary?
Yes.
Okay. Let's target 1 January, just prior to that, and of course that's New Year's. But I'll keep,
Keep us in the loop.
I'll keep staff informed.
Okay.
As we go along.
Continue to January.
Kevin, I think someone will be looking for some signatures from you in the near future now that you've approved the staff approval. You got it, yeah? I'll see you later. See you tomorrow. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chapman. Next, F, request of the Reynolds Trust Committee to be put on the town website. Oh, can you get by me?
That's right.
Yes. Okay. And it was just, a lot of people don't realize what the grants and scholarships they offer to the student residents of Exeter. Do a bit more information out to them about what the trust does. So if it's an easy thing, we can just.
I don't see why it wouldn't, just another.
I spoke to Amy, and she said that there's sufficient room on the website to do this. The Rural Land Trust is also probably gonna look at wanting to put information out, have their own page as well. So,
Well, good.
yeah, she said there's plenty of room to do it. She'll probably put another tab, like she could tab for town departments, and she'll put another tab probably for committees. To put, applications and information out. So she said there's sufficient room.
Okay. Any further comments? I'll make a motion that we allow the Reynolds Trust Committee to be on the town website. Second. All in favor? Aye. Next, we have a petition to amend the Exeter Code of Ordinances, zoning appendix A, Article 2, Section 2.4, and 3669, submitted by Green Development LLC. Jim, you were explaining some more regarding this before.
Yes, Mr. President, the way to amend the zoning ordinance is to start with an application. Usually it's forwarded to the planning board if it comes here. The planning board then has a formal application process for a zoning amendment. This is called a petition, and it looks like a private person, a private entity has requested Green
And so my suggestion would be that we advise the applicant to go to the planning board, simultaneously advise the planning board that we have received a request, a petition that requires an application that the planning board is authorized under the ordinance to take and receive and then process the application as they see fit under their jurisdiction. So I think that's the way to go in this. That's really all the council can do at this point. So you said it's a letter to the applicant, let them know the process. Is the applicant here tonight? Maybe we can ask.
It is, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, the solicitor, it is, isn't it?
Good name, sir?
John Anthony on behalf of Green Development. The purpose for the petition is exactly that, to establish the process, to proceed through it. As you know, under state statute, the council is obligated to consecutively advertise for 3 weeks. For a public hearing, it has to submit it to the planning board for its recommendation. So we just want exactly that, the authorization of the planning board to review our application so they can properly vent it and then give you, the town council, its recommendation and allow us to proceed through the process and then permit you to then advertise in accordance with state statute and your own zoning code.
Can you understand the process? And that's basically what it is. It would,
The only question I had was whether or not, and I couldn't see whether or not you have a requirement of multiple readings, where it's submitted.
well, we wouldn't get there yet because we don't know what the application is gonna bring. That's to be heard before the planning board, so they have the jurisdiction to do
Yeah,
that.
so that's the first instance.
So we don't get into reading anything until it's presented to us through the application process.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, if the applicant's here, you don't need to write to them, as long
Yeah,
as they're
I mean-
advised.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can acknowledge the advisement.
Then you should go to the planning board. What the council needs to do, I think, is just advise the planning board formally that they are authorized to accept and to review the application, and process if you want, of course.
Would you do that tonight, or?
Yeah, you could do
No,
that
we
tonight.
will vote. Motion to
I would do that by way of a vote, correct.
Okay.
Refer to the planning board for them to advise them that they're authorized to accept the application and review it, of course.
Go ahead, Ted.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we advise the planning board that there is a petition for a zoning change, and they are authorized to accept and review it. Review the to accept an application. Accept the application. Because this is not an application.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, we have H, introduction, consideration, possible action. Proposed amendments to the Exeter Code of Ordinances, Annex A zoning, Article 11, renewable energy, Section 11.1, solar.
What's that?
So then that one is in
Okay, mine's all marked up.
You can leave that.
Okay. I've reviewed the proposed one, and there's a lot of issues in here, a little far reaching. I'm gonna start on page 2. Under general requirements, 5. Proposed site regrading shall not exceed 1.5 feet above or below existing grade. I've been in the site contracting business for over 40 years, and that one requirement alone is almost impossible to meet on any construction site. That's the first problem.
Excuse me, Danny, where is that? Where is that?
Page 2.
Page 2, number 5.
Formerly number
In
6.
fact, probably the only place you could probably get away with doing that is in a perfectly level football field or a turf field. Number 7, ground-mounted solar energy facility shall, as a minimum, conform to twice the yard setback requirements of the applicable zoning district. What's the side setback in RU4, 80 feet? I know it's 100 on the front, so there's more restriction there, you just doubled it. Number 10 is gonna be covered by, Rhode Island DEM anyway. 11, buffering. You know, when I'm reading the definition, you're buffering here, what really gets me, and this is all throughout this ordinance, this can be accomplished through landscaping and or fencing or other mechanisms deemed appropriate by the planning board. Number 12, landscaping. Clearing of natural vegetation shall be strictly limited to what is necessary for the construction, operation, maintenance of the solar facility, or as otherwise prescribed by applicable laws, regulations, and bylaws. Additional landscape buffers may be required by the planning board in areas where no natural, it just keeps going on. And number 13, reasonable efforts as determined by the planning board. It's like the planning board is becoming the almighty God in charge of this project. Why do we even need an engineer, surveyors, or anything? If this is just page 2 that I'm on. You did your homework with number 15, because I do know, I have Shartner Farms purchase and sales agreement, and in his purchase and sales agreement, he is allowed alternate energy on his conserved land. That's in there. I get into 17, and here we go. This is like the marijuana bill. B, 17B, treatment of invasive species must be done without the use of herbicides and pesticides that would inhibit the future agricultural use of the site. I don't know about pesticides to treat an invasive plant. Siting of the facility overall, individual panels shall keep with the existing contours of the land, and only pile-driven or ballast block footing are to be used so as to minimize the disturbance of soils during installation. Once again, it's the building trade. This is why we have engineers design this stuff. And there's gonna be footings on some of this equipment. You're not gonna get away with just a pile-driven beam in there. Some of this stuff's gonna be heavier, it's gonna need a spread footing. And some of you know, I do a lot of work in Vermont. Up there, this is another issue with solar. And existing contours of the land. This is a battle up there. This is asking for trouble here, you know. I think some of them are sitting sideways in Vermont on hillsides. So that's gotta go. A lot of this stuff is, it needs a lot of work. Class 1 survey, that's in your land development. Proof of liability in this insurance and the amount approved by the town. Are any of these projects being put on town property that you have in the future? I mean, that would be something that's between the landowner and whoever's installing them. Page 5. Let me go back to page 4, because that's where that one is. Number 13, landscape plan stamped by a Rhode Island registered landscape architect showing the following information. And once again, any areas of buffering or screening required by the planning board. If I keep going through there, everything refers to the planning board shall have the authority, the requirements of the planning board. If you're gonna do all this, why does the applicant even need to hire any professionals? Because they could come in with a plan, and we can have someone that knows nothing about building, and say, I don't like that, I want this. Then you get someone's personal agenda involved. G, to ensure the fulfillment of the requirements of this section, the planning board shall have the authority to require the following. And number 2, provision of additional landscaping beyond the minimum requirements of this section. So you've got a regulation telling them what they have to do. Well, I don't like that, I want more. It's this thing. Before I even go any farther, let me get to H number 1. This is the one that really gets me. Ground-mounted solar facilities allowed pursuant to this section shall occupy no more than 15% of a parcel on which they are located. So if I owned 100 acres of land, you've taken away my setbacks, now you're telling me I can only build on 15 acres. And in that 100 acres, I'm sure the DEM's gonna find 20 acres of wetland. Then we're gonna have the setbacks on the wetland, so we're gonna lose another 200 foot there all around the wetland. It's like, basically what this ordinance tells me is, you don't want any solar in this town whatsoever. And here's another one that I caught on page 6, and this happened in the last draft you brought us, I believe it was last month. Or it was the moratorium where you referenced Route 102 Scenic Overlay District. And this is in Section H, J, number 1. Additional requirements for utility scale facilities along scenic roadways. Ground mounted, we have it right there, scenic roadways. Is there a definition in this ordinance of scenic roadway, or are we referring to that ordinance that you've been working on, wanting us to follow an ordinance following an ordinance that doesn't exist? This needs a lot of work before it can go any farther, is my opinion, so. And the zoning matrix doesn't look that bad, so, but, I mean, as you go through it, there's a lot wrong with it, and it's definitely not ready for a public hearing. That's what I have to say.
Right? Right? Yeah, I said that.
My only comment, Mr. President, is just the fact that it's 7 pages long. It just tells me that, I mean, I certainly don't have the experience that Councilman Patterson has. He brought some of these to my attention, and I don't have the land use development that Mr. Patterson has. But like I said, just by the fact that it's 7 pages long, tells me that it's extremely restrictive. I mean, as a layman, if I was to read this document, it tells me, to reiterate what Dan said, that it appears that the planning board doesn't want any development of this sort in the town because it's so restrictive, everything that's being asked to be done. So, I don't know, there's gotta be some type of middle of the road. I mean,
Some sort of compromise?
the developer has asked on more than one occasion to have a workshop with the planning board to try and address some of these concerns that they have from what they say they want to protect the town, and I can understand that. But at the same point, you've got to respect the individuals in town that are landowners that have the property that want to develop it and put solar on that land. I mean, why, you know, if this was a specific ordinance that was particular to town property, I can understand it. But you're gonna apply this toward individuals that wanna develop their own land, and they should have to be able, they should be able to have the ability to do what they want with their own land without the type of restrictions that are in this ordinance, in my opinion, Mr. President.
Right?
I just had a question for the planning board, that's all, about it. I don't want to make a comment, I can mirror these two gentlemen and your expertise on this, and I'm glad that you had talked about it, Danny. For me, it's, I just have a question about it, that's all. If we get asked the planning board, that's all.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, what is the scenic overlay district? What does that mean? I've heard it, we saw it on a draft copy of a resolution in.
So I can address that comment. J1 mentions adjacent to a designated local or state scenic highway. 102 is a state designated scenic highway. That's the only reference in here. We don't reference any scenic overlay because there isn't one. We reference
Well,
it.
we did in your proposed moratorium.
Okay,
you did.
let me finish.
Yep, okay.
The planning board has been working on looking at a scenic overlay for 102 based on the fact that 102 is a state designated scenic highway. The state designation doesn't carry any protection with it.
the state has recognized that 102 is a scenic highway. There is scenic value associated with 102. There is no protection for that scenic resource with that designation. The planning board would like to, and has been working on, some sort of regulation that works to help protect that scenic resource based on that state designation. They've been working on a draft. There is no adopted Exeter scenic overlay. What's in here under J1 is a ground-mounted solar photovoltaic facilities located adjacent to a designated local or state scenic highway shall locate their solar facility, including solar panels and any appurtenant structures, out of the view shed from the scenic roadway. The intent is to make sure that the state designated scenic roadway remains scenically valuable. Solar panels are not part of that scenic designation. The state has recognized that there's a scenic value there, and the planning board would like to help keep that scenic value. That's the intent there.
Thank you. Do you have any drafts of what they've proposed or written yet?
Yes,
Do you have copies of that?
sure. I'd be happy to, if I could speak to some of the comments that you've made.
Go right ahead, that's why we're here.
The wind energy ordinance that you just looked at is 6 pages long. I don't think we should be looking at the number of pages as a value of how restrictive an ordinance is. I don't think anyone thought that was overly restrictive, and that's only 1 page longer than this ordinance. The planning board went back and forth on the site regrading, and the feeling was that solar panels can roll with the property. They don't need a flat site. Some sites are not gonna be conducive to solar panels if you need extensive grading of the facility. The planning board felt that clear cutting and flattening property, being that solar panels are part of the reason that they're proposed as, not so intrusive, is that you get to reclaim the property 25 years later. You get to have it back and you can do what you want with it. Well, not if you've bulldozed the crap out of it and cut all the trees down. You've got a flat field left. So they felt that minimizing the grading of the site would help with reclamation after the usable life of the solar panels was over. And that would play into this idea that 25 years later, this is really just a temporary use, because that's how it's being marketed to the planning board. We're only here for 25 years and then our lease is up and we're gonna go away and you guys can have your property back. Like I said, that's not gonna be the case if they're allowed to completely massacre the site and flatten it if it wasn't flat before. So there will be properties that won't lend themselves to solar panels if we have some protection in there that you can't just go in and smash everything flat so that you can make everything available for solar panels. That's where that came from.
But I totally disagree with that. Like I said, I've done a lot of commercial work through the years. For example, site regrading not to exceed 1.5 feet above or below existing grade. The proposed site across the street from the transfer station. With that one sentence, you wouldn't be able to build the entrance road into that project. Because there's probably a 12 to 15 foot difference in elevation from the road to the top of that ledge in there. And I believe the design standard is 10 degrees in that first 100 feet coming down to the intersection of the road. That's a standard. You wouldn't be able to build the road. You would not be able to build an entrance.
I brought that up about the contour of that property in particular, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And it was felt that on a site like that, special consideration could be given.
It doesn't say that. It says shall not exceed, not may not, shall not. That's what I mean, there's a lot of problems with this ordinance. It's very
Our
restrictive.
problem is protecting the taxpayers, protecting their property, and complying with the comprehensive plan.
Again,
And
this,
that's very important, complying with the
Our
comprehensive plan.
comprehensive plan was expired in 2009, I understand.
it's expired by state standards.
By state standards.
We're still bound to live by it.
We're bound to it,
Yes.
and I'm sure alternate energy is gonna be in that new one, so we're not in violation of the law if it's not even called for in the existing comprehensive plan.
We still have to comply by it until the new one comes
So then
out.
we're not allowed to have any alternate energy whatsoever according to
We
the
don't say
comprehensive
that.
plan.
No, the
Nobody said
comprehensive
that.
plan doesn't dictate.
You're saying that, not us.
The comprehensive plan doesn't
Would a work
dictate
session-
allowable uses.
Should the council and the planning board be favorable, so that way we can hammer out the differences? We come up with one working document instead of going back and forth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Planning board is amenable to that?
Sure.
On the work session. As we say, a work session, we can figure out all the differences and, okay.
I mean, I think if you hear some of the reasoning and the logic behind where we came up with a lot of this, we've had extensive discussions about why we put what we put in here. We would hope that you could hear where we're coming from, because like with the wind ordinance, the goal here is balance. This is about allowing for the development of solar panels for individuals on their property, but at the same time, the planning board's charge is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the entire community. And I am regularly getting inundated with phone calls from solar developers. Can I clear cut my property? Do I need permits for this? How do I change my zoning? You know, we're gonna alter the landscape and
So,
the
I
identity
think-
of Exeter.
Like I said, I think having a work session with the two boards and you as well.
I agree.
That's a great idea.
Knowing that this is December, Christmas, and all the holidays, January, sound good?
Mr. President, I'm sorry, I'm leaving, but I just wanted to say one comment to the planning board. Maybe you should talk to the budding towns like Richmond and ask them how they're doing all this clear cutting and put along these solar panels. 2 massive solar panels. They had to blast 8.5 feet of ledge. They pretty much flattened it out. There isn't a lot of slope to it. So maybe you should go down to other towns and see the planning boards what are not so restrictive to the taxpayers. And let them.
Come to the, like I said, a work session.
I would love to, because you need to go to these other towns and see what they're doing. Because I've never heard a planning board be so restrictive on people that are paying taxes on their property and trying to use their property, whether they do solar, wind, whatever it is. You need to do your little more homework on that.
Okay. Next, you have historic preservation and cemeteries. Cool. All right. Next, we have the trailer park license renewal, Mobile Village Incorporated, in the 550 Victoria Highway, Victory Highway. We had postponed approving his mobile home license to this month, based on the fact that we were hoping he would mitigate some issues. Did receive a letter, I believe, today as well, stating some new issues. Then we heard from the building inspector for the
Safe up there. As far as Ron is concerned, he's made a good faith effort and
This is a letter from regard to this. Do we have to grant his license based on good faith effort? Do we have to hold it until we can further development?
How many items do we know that are left on that list that haven't been completed? Do you know?
The polls haven't been set up, but they need to reach out to National Grid.
they haven't, we're supposed to do it Friday, this Friday.
One of them has been. The other one, the guy wanted, Dig Safe, so I called Dig Safe, and I gotta call them, because Ron told me to call them tomorrow, find out when we can start, because they haven't been over there yet. But I have a confirmation number, but I think don't amount to nothing until they come over and look at it. The pole guy won't put it in until he has Dig Safe look at it.
Do we know if the tax assessor is in possession of the list regarding the mobile homes in the park yet?
Carrie was okay with the list? I'm not really sure where.
I got another one too. I got a different one. I think it might even be my car. Billy had problems with his computer, so he just got it to me Friday.
What is this?
Good night. Can I just ask for advice from the solicitor with regards to what his opinion is regarding, if we were to grant it contingent upon the last few items that are on the list that need to be completed, do you feel comfortable enough to go forward with that, or do you think we should base it on everything being completed first?
Well, you could grant it subject to its completion. Has he indicated the day how long it's gonna take?
You're supposed to do Friday.
You could grant it subject to the completion being certified by the inspector within 30 days or whatever period of time you think is appropriate. But that would be.
And Carrie was satisfied with the list.
Okay, and we didn't get any specific language from the building inspector other than that he thought that it was a good faith effort?
That was his oral report to me today.
Okay.
Is there a motion before the council?
Go for it, Frank.
I'll make a motion that we grant the license renewal application. The reason of the good faith effort that was expressed to us by the building inspector, and contingent upon remaining items be cleared up within the next 30 days.
I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Ken, impact fee study?
So, I emailed Ashley, mine and Jim's thoughts on what her first draft was. She responded back with a revised version, and then I'll just send it to Lynn, Jim, and to see if this is, it seems like it's, the intent was there now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got what was asked for originally, so from my review, it appears to be appropriately addressed, so.
So I guess we're just ready to go to bid, we'll send it back, it'll go out to bid for the purchasing agent. Once we get the final deal to the
Okay. Next item D, introduction, consideration, possible action, the ordinance regulating certain secondary agricultural uses and activities. That was one we've been keeping on there because we were watching the state, still bears.
Same.
Still bears watching.
Continue it, yeah.
Okay.
Section 7,
All kinds of rumors floating around.
Go to the state house. All right, continue that one. E, the November communication number 28, the installation of street lights at 699 South County Trail.
So Steve went out, and he contacted DOT, and then, spoke to Ms. Marchand. She's supposed to contact DOT, and DOT, if they deem it necessary, will install the pole and will pay for the pole, but they don't allow residents to purchase poles any longer. Option is gone, but Pam is just going to do some solar lights at her facility, her restaurant.
Okay, so we don't need to.
So it's done.
Okay.
So you want to make a motion to
Okay.
remove?
remove number 10E.
All right, I'll second the motion. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Number F, the intermunicipal services sharing agreement with North Kingstown IT. Frank, this was, and you've been on there. And Ken's done some research on that. You want to share where you're at with what you've done?
Right, essentially, a proposal for a third neutral party to come in and do an assessment of our situation. And as I said, because I think we want to proceed as quickly as possible to allow the committee to meet with this group and then approve, I don't know how quick it's going to be, but approve the awarding of a $999 contract for them to come do an assessment. But only if the committee was myself. You're not going to be around, but
Frank, I was wondering if you'd be willing to be on that committee. Sure. Spearhead that.
so we have a volunteer.
Give them volunteers all in town, IT.
And my
So,
we didn't win.
I'm a computer moron.
You can't come.
I have enough on my plate.
We build a new computer building, we'll ask you to come.
I hand the phones to the kid, here, fix it.
So we'll set up, they said they're willing to come down for a meeting, to go over it, and already, you know, to meet with this group, to actually see what they can provide for us.
Do we have an IT committee?
Well,
We just made it.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Maria.
and the volunteer. What's his name?
James Angie?
Yeah. So I would need, if you want to proceed before the next meeting, if we get together and we say, yeah, go ahead, go for it. I don't know how much they're gonna get done considering the holidays, but a lot of it's gonna be remote. And we're gonna have to start the process of having North Kingston IT allow this third party have access to our SIP network from a remote site to review what we have and what our needs are. But they'll also come down to the property, and we'll talk about with them, you know, what we want and what specifics are and what they're gonna give us for the evaluation. But I think the sooner the better. So if you want to,
So do you need a motion from us to proceed?
I think it would be appropriate to make a motion to proceed to allow the,
All right, so I'll make a motion to allow the committee to engage this third party.
I would say allow the purchasing agent.
To allow the purchasing agent to act on behalf of this committee in going forward in this project.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. So, and then also I'll send an email out now, to you, and, so I don't know about if they're available during the day or at night, or if you're available during the day.
I can make my schedule flexible, that's no problem.
You like late nights, right? Oh, all right, so I'll just see what's available for everybody.
Can I touch base on a couple, one or two other items with regards to that?
Of course.
Agenda item, Mr. President? So, after our last council meeting, I know that Lynn was contacted by the town manager in North Kingstown regarding this issue. And the town manager informed through Lynn, who informed me that, and it was also in the article in the paper, that he wasn't aware of any problems that the town of Exeter was having with our IT. So I guess at one point he had an interest in establishing a meeting, but I never got a phone call with regards to attending any meeting. And as of today, Lynn received the communication from IT saying that the Wi-Fi issue that originally initiated this conversation was going to be installed on January 8th. So it's my opinion that, you know, we just continue to move forward and look at what our options are. If they want to install the Wi-Fi on the 8th, it's still later than I wanted it to have it done. I don't know why it has to take so long, that it's gonna take over a month to have it put in. I don't know if that has to do with the equipment or whatever, but, other than that, I haven't had any communications with Mr. Fuller Jerry, who runs the IT department. I haven't had any other further communication from anybody there. I don't know if anybody else on the council has.
I'll tell you, like, I had one brief conversation with town manager, and it was to say, we probably should, maybe should meet, and then that was it. There was no discussion of what's occurred, whether he, I know he said in the paper, and we both saw the article saying, we had a conversation, and we moved forward positive, it was more, maybe we should meet, we'll set up an email communication, that was the end of the communication.
So it started and ended there.
I started and ended there.
Right.
Let's have a meeting, and then that was it.
Well, the email that Lynn received with regards to the Wi-Fi being installed on the 8th of January was pretty much short and sweet too. There was no other issues. Is there anything else that we can do for you? Is there anything else we can do to assist the town? There was no other further discussion with regards to our concerns. So, right,
and
exactly, right.
I agree with you that we should move forward in this direction. If, once we have the community goes forward, they find out this is what we need, I think I would encourage maybe on Kingston to come forward with getting another proposal. But again, I think we're moving in the right direction. We need to see if we are getting the best deal and what the best deal is for the town.
Right, okay. I just thought those were a couple of items that the council should be aware of. Okay.
Good.
All right. Thank you, Ken.
Right. We'd like to give a report on the Department of Public Works.
Public Works, well, I like to talk about Public Works tonight and the effort they did for our Christmas tree lighting, which is a big event in our town. And with Lynn, help from Lynn and Maria, and Job Corps provided cookies and the refreshments we had. And I know that we had some DPW people doing the detail, traffic detail, how about Richard, Scott. They set up the trailer, and the tree, I believe, came from Champion Farm again, is that correct?
Mhm.
The tree, okay. Well, thank you, Danny, for that. On the process of doing all that, and coordinating all that stuff, and everything went really well, and it was a good night for us. I'd like to thank Steve, he's not here tonight, but thank Steve for his efforts and what you all did to make everything happen, so I commend you for that. Transfer station report, we have a dumpster down there is full of metal and it's overflowing with metal. Unfortunately, the people that haul the metal had an unfortunate occurrence with their truck that hauls that metal, and they're trying to reestablish a new way of pulling that dumpster out and bringing it to the proper disposal point. So it's might take a few more days. People had asked me about it, and that's that. So, other than that, in transfer station, everything's running pretty well, pretty organized. The gentlemen are there, they watch what goes on, they have a good eye, and they're very diligent about charging fees and going by the regulations that we have established there. Animal control, tomorrow night, we are gonna be taking part in our first animal shelter committee meeting. Tom will be on that committee, and we want to discuss ways to streamline our operation, or ways of maybe tweaking things maybe, and kind of thinking about other ways, the sources of revenue there, and we got our heads together, and I think we'll do a great job. I know we had a transfer station study committee last year, and we came out with some findings, and we had a lot of input, and it's made up of citizens of the town, myself, Ken, and
The animal shelter?
yeah,
Steve and Dina.
Steve and Dina, yep, Dina's our senior animal control officer, so we'll have a lot of input on that. It's a public meeting, people are invited to come if you like.
5 o'clock tomorrow night.
It's 5 o'clock, it's an early time. Tomorrow we do a swearing in, and we'll talk about what our goals are for that committee, right, Lynn? So that's tomorrow night here in the town hall. You'll see me. I'm all set, thank you very much.
Thank you. Frank, tax collectors, liaison report?
Yes, Mr. President. The monthly collections report from Kim Robitaille said that the total collections for the month of November were $824,000. $854.96, and all her monies have been reported to the treasurer. She also continues on to say that she submitted the motor vehicle block list to the DMV using the new computer program that they have, which is evidently up and operational. And there has been a few issues on the DMV side, but they are being corrected on a daily basis. And she also reports that there's a much better transmission process than in past transmitters. So I think that's some good news.
Question on that.
Yes.
Do you know if that now means that we can, the issue with paying online for registration in Exeter?
That's a good question. I need to confirm that, and I can get back to the council, either by email or by a more comprehensive report by the next council meeting in regards to that. Because I want to find out exactly what the issues are on the DMV side. I don't know if they're the same as they were before, but evidently the new software was supposed to take care of all those problems. And their goal was to have all 39 municipalities be able to do that with no problem.
I think it was us and Central Falls and those outs.
Yeah, and I think there was one other community as well. I don't think it was Block Island, it was one other community.
Bristol? I think it was one of the Bristol County.
Somebody in East Bay.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're certainly welcome to contact Kim, but I can provide a little feedback.
Sure.
We are having some success with being able to register online. Some residents who have blocks or blocks have been placed in the past are being referred to the tax collector's office to get the stamp, and that's both in person and online. So it really depends individually on the person who is trying to register. If you've had a block in the past, even though it's been cleared, it might have been cleared, it could have been 3 years ago, but sometimes they don't have it quite right in the system yet, and we might have to come and get a release. So we're making progress toward that, and people seem to be enjoying that, that liberty to be able to do that.
Right. That's great. That's great news. Thank you for that update, because I know that's been an issue of mine going back a number of years, and it was an issue of Kevin's, as well as the town, as well as the DMV, so if we get that taken care of, that will certainly help everybody. As long as, I mean, I know the main issue in the past has always been if we had anything like that, the town still had to be able to get a hold of their tax dollars that had coming to them,
Right,
which was always the problem with all the previous software.
correct.
So hopefully if that's been corrected, that will be good. Thank you, Marie.
Dan, public safety.
Let's see, won't quite on the public safety front, but we've got a communication here from Stefan. I hope they can imagine Amy has this on the town's website. Wednesday night, December 6th, from 6 to 8 at the library, they are having a community emergency preparedness workshop. And let's see, let me get to Stefan's page here. You're gonna learn, he's giving a talk about the emergency management system in Exeter, how they communicate the information, how to develop a plan to keep you, your family, and your business safe in an emergency. They've got a guest speaker, Paul Dasuik from National Grid. I don't know if I want to be that man down there this time. Yeah. But he's going to explain how the power grid works and how National Grid gets power restored. But that's Wednesday night from 6 to 8. Stefan still has this on the email here, his Code Red program that he set up over a year ago, and where you can get all your updates during emergencies and that. He's pretty good at it, and it's on the town's website at www.town.exeter.ri.us. And that's it.
Oh, I apologize, I skipped over a report of Frank's.
That's okay.
You know how that feelings.
Actually, I didn't really have anything to report. The superintendent didn't have an actual submit anything to his blog. The only thing that I would remind the council of is that we're quickly approaching the end of the year, so the omnibus meeting will be coming up pretty soon. And Lynn and I have been talking back and forth via email, and I'll make sure that I give plenty of notice to everybody on the council and when the dates are. Got to involve us in the school committee when it starts getting together. Other than that, I don't really have anything specific to report from the school district.
Okay.
I know under public safety, I know we sent a letter to Job Corps, I know Cal's on here tonight, regarding the
crossing of the
crossing, people on Route 2. I know they come out of, well, likely to come out of Job Corps,
Right.
and they walk on the road, they wear dark clothing. And I had suggested, Cal maybe approach someone at Job Corps, or we write a letter to Job Corps saying maybe folks that go there, maybe they should be issued maybe a reflective belt or something like that, that when headlights hit, you can see the person. I know we use them in the Air Force, we use them on the flight line at night or early morning. But we have, I'm riding down the road at times and people are, you know, you got the glare. I don't know, it seems like everybody's headlights are brighter now for some odd reason. I get these headlights in my face and all of a sudden I look and these few people standing over here, I'm saying, good thing I saw them, I didn't even see them at all. And I know there was an incident, I think in Hopkinton, where a girl was struck on Main Street and she was wearing dark clothing. Don't know if that was the reason why, but it's maybe part of the reason. And I'd like to implement something with Job Corps that maybe can prevent some kind of an incident to happen, that's all.
Can I just add something? It would be helpful if they crossed where the light was too. They can't run across the street anywhere along there when they see the cars, you know.
See, I know,
making the car.
that's a good point, because I know they train, I know they're good at what they do, but heavens to Betsy, I haven't said that word in a long time. They need to implement some kind of safety thing when the students are out on the street. They need to implement that.
Okay, well.
Maybe Ripta should go down to the Job Corps, and they wouldn't have to cross the street there, it's a dangerous street to cross. Maybe if Ripta went right down to where they need to, a lot of them are waiting for the bus.
Well, our initial thought last month was that we were gonna request of RIPTA to consider putting an actual bus stop on that side of the road, like they have on the other side of the road.
So they don't have to cross.
Exactly, right.
Well, they cross too, they go to the restaurant and they go to the general store also, they don't just go to the bus stop.
Yeah.
There's activity.
That would
in
eliminate
corner.
quite a bit of it, maybe.
Just trying to do some preventive maintenance, that's all.
Yeah,
I'm
rural
sorry.
interest.
Go right ahead.
Rural Land Trust, we tried to have a meeting in November at Wall School. What's the lady at the school district? In the office there?
Robin Syria?
No, what's the other one? She's a secretary or something? Might have been Robin.
She's the administrative assistant to the
Well,
superintendent.
she had set up to where we could use Wall School, allegedly notified the custodian that we would be there. We pounded on the door for 20 minutes, and no one would answer the door. There's cars there, there's lights on. Now, we didn't have a meeting, we were supposed to have another one, but I don't know what happened trying to get everybody together, so. No meeting for November, so that's where we're at.
The Exeter Public Library report, just continue to have high numbers of people using the library. Again, that was the meeting that Dan referenced on Wednesday night, and also just a reminder that again, if you're looking to get a passport, you can call ahead to the library, and they'll be willing to get you a passport if you want to travel overseas. Moving on to the Rolling Greens Preserve, nothing new to report there. Ken, you're up with the town council assistant report.
Nothing other than, you know, we have the animal shelter meeting tomorrow night, and January 1st, that's a budget process. Yeah, a letter sent out to the town departments and committees, and asked them for requests, so we'll be sending that out January. It seems like we just did this. So,
Time again.
Time flies when you have fun, my friend. That's it.
Jim? Busy month, and the two biggest things were the Arcadia case. We argued that before Judge Leach in November, and it was so it was obviously a pretty involved session with him. He promised to get a decision out somewhere around the 15th. His target date is going to be the 15th of December for decision on it. He didn't tip his hand as to which way he's going on it, I'll tell you that. He peppered all the parties, I think, with questions like I expected. So, in any event, hopefully, middle of December, we'll have some sort of at least an initial decision out of the Superior Court on the Arcadia project. Hopefully that'll tell us what way the judge believes the procedure should go from here on out. Second matter that took up some time and will take up time bright and early tomorrow morning is the Zarella case. You recall we won that at the Superior Court level. Mr. Zarella was seeking to have the court approve his use of the premises as a wedding venue, commercial wedding venue. We defeated it at the Superior Court level, an appeal was taken, and the Supreme Court had us submit briefs, which we did, and the argument is tomorrow morning, 9:30 in the morning. So, something to, hopefully to advise you about next month, assuming that the court gets a decision out promptly. You can never really tell exactly when they're going to issue it, but there may be a decision early in the beginning of the year. So, that's it. There may be a couple of executive session issues.
Okay.
Mr. President, before we get to number 12, can we take a brief recess?
Sure.
2 minutes.
2 minute recess?
Yes.
All right. Motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye. I gotta go back and eat wetlands.
Hey, good, how you doing?
Good, I gotta go. Yep.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, I was so glad when it's.
You got too many pins and bars.
Yeah, they're in a rural area.
Very good point.
Yeah, I
No, that's right.
If you call real early, I'll be
Walk, but no.
We'll see a better outcome for
I wanna
us.
go in step by step.
There it is, it doesn't even impact me at all, I don't know.
Probably is.
Willpower.
You have a nice one.
Yes.
You remind us,
Can we stand in the back and have a conversation while they're having the meeting so that nobody can hear the meeting?
Is
that permissible?
Discussing.
We can go around the corner. The whole time?
That's
We're gonna have a document make some
They're not ready.
Well, thank you for your input, though. That's my mother.
To be honest with you, I really
I know. Oh, the bar, the bar.
The work session is gonna be fun, Ted.
Thank you so much.
Tuesday's the work session. I wanna know what the public safety issue.
Jim, are you from originally Erie?
No.
I don't even know.
Can you tell my lines on my accent?
I'll see you tomorrow night, we'll have more fun. My last meeting.
I think that's right.
My dad was in business.
Well, the reason why I asked, I know growing up in Lime Rock, I was leaving a water hole. And they said it was a bottomless pit.
Everybody's
leaving. You couldn't reach the bottom.
Is that place still open? Yeah. The limestone place on 156?
That's where it
That
is.
is the oldest piece of land
In America.
in America.
Can you still pull right off of 146 in that place?
Yeah.
The workshop.
They apparently cut that off. There's no more, they're not doing any more mining. There's still some.
Website for it, right?
Years ago,
It was nice.
years ago,
Lake.
North Adams, Mass. Pfizer
And
Industries.
then she'll.
It's a mountain.
We'll also post an
I used to
agenda.
haul it out of
The
there.
candies.
Sounds good.
Because
Lines from
it'll
different
be,
areas have different
majority.
names.
They don't mind, it's my dinner.
Had to have.
Not very good dinner.
Whole board is the majority.
You ever been in North Adams, Mass?
I gotta go back to East
They
Providence.
voted like the worst town in America.
Vacant property, I
Zigzag.
told the rehab it for 6 months.
And then you zigzag down into it.
So you ran out of oil.
Come and if you're gonna come.
I kept telling them, you know, it's a quarter now, it's 3 years. The real, they ran out of oil, they should be checking that.
So what are you gonna do, take 5 gallons of it?
No, I'm gonna take, no, I'm gonna take, space heat. Whatever space heat.
You can always,
I've never seen you before the house.
No, but I have, you gotta have 65 degrees It's good now.
I only do it maybe like once every 2 or 3 weeks.
So I have the blow gun, they blow.
Oh, yeah. Where about East Providence?
Warren Avenue Broadway.
Talking about the
I bought
work
one.
session.
It's on Windsor Street.
I bought one.
Yeah, is that right?
Are we loving,
I
are
have
we
3 properties in Warren, they're football.
Work sessions are much, they're much more informal,
Yeah.
and this.
They've been on my job for 6 months,
Yeah,
it's supposed to be another 3 months. There's a house on Jacksonville. Everything you turn around, you open every door. And then oil runs out. It's like, you're kidding me. What timing? And that was a Saturday. It was
January, once the
fine.
holidays are done.
But you have too much candy or something? No, you're quiet. Oh, I'm to new me. To
new you.
Okay, ladies.
Sorry. Cool coming across this new me too. Come on, I know the older you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
I'll make a motion to resume.
There's nobody left.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Back in action. All right, bill sheets.
I'll make a motion to approve the bill sheet.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Are we good to continue?
I'm the audience.
You're like the studio audience.
That's it, baby. I'll laugh.
You didn't see discussion, Mr. President.
I did, you should hear.
Okay.
Next, we have the tax assessors abatements.
Let's see. Would you like to know what they are, Mr. President? For the record?
There's nothing we want to approve.
Well, I can read the one that we have. if
Tax
you'd like.
assessor.
Oh, not tax collect, tax assessor, I'm sorry. Motion approved.
All right.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Every month I do that.
Very good.
And now, we will move on to the tax collectors remittances abatements.
Yes. There were 2 abatements totaling $1,184.55.
Do it the same month? Pardon? How much were the abatements? I have the abatements totaling $1,184. Yes, correct. I
$184.55.
was reading a different one. I apologize, sir.
That's all right.
It's a late night. All right, I'll
I'll
second the motion.
And he made the motion?
I read it, you made the motion.
I make the motion.
And you seconded it.
Any discussion? Again, I apologize, Frank.
That's right.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Remittances.
And, it was the tax collectors remittances.
Oh, here we are. I'm sorry. Let's see, we have, one motor vehicle remittance for $182.85.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Next, we went to number 13, other administrative issues. Is there anything anybody would like to discuss?
I would, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
So, last month, during the executive session, we had some discussion regarding the transfer station study committee. And it was discussed, we might want to have a special meeting. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that in executive session or about it under administrative issues to set the date for that special meeting.
We could probably set the date, we can set the date in open forum.
Okay. And I didn't know, I know we had another request for a special meeting. I don't know how much we can fit in on that night, depending on the availability of everybody and how much time we'll have that night, or whether you just want to have the special meeting just for that one issue.
I think that one, because of the conversation we were having last month, that might just be one by itself.
Okay. The only other suggestion that I would make to the council, and I can put it in the form of a motion, is that I think when we have that special meeting, we should invite the chairman of that study committee, so in case we have any specific questions, they can't be directly answered from the actual executive report, he can answer them for us.
Do we want to also invite,
I think Director Matchek should be there as well. Yeah.
Lynn, do you know what dates the town hall will be open or the library?
The library would know.
I know it's tough this month,
Are you-
but I want to at least bring it up anyway.
Do you want to do it this month?
We don't, you guys want to try to squeeze something in this month, or just knowing?
I didn't look at I didn't actually take the time before I came tonight to bring that up to see what nights that the town hall was available, so if we have to push it off till January,
You might want to get some dates and talk to the two parties and see when they're available.
I think we'd also want Maria there, basically in the morning. Do we want to maybe send out some email on what dates everybody's available, either this month or January, beginning of January, knowing that budget season, like Ken mentioned, is.
well, yeah, I mean, we've got a holiday this month, where everybody may be busy, and then next month we start in the budget, so I don't know whether sooner is better or later is better, I'm not sure.
We usually don't start with our budget.
But I just don't want-
Till March.
Yeah, okay.
So we
I just don't want to let too much more time go by. I think this executive report needs to be issued, especially before we enter into the budget session.
You need a couple of them, because there's a few issues we were discussing
That's right.
about the transfer station, the
Right.
lease purchase,
Mm-hmm.
another plan.
Do you want
Right.
December dates or?
Sure. So we want to at least try to December days, and if then
Okay,
use January as a backup, that gives us some time.
very good.
So December 11, December 19, 21.
This is January or December?
This is December.
I'm available all three of those dates.
What did I say? You said the
11th,
11th?
the 19th, and the 21st.
21st is a
On a
Thursday?
Thursday, yes.
What's the 19th?
A Tuesday.
19th, I'm not available.
And then I
Okay.
believe 26th
I don't
and
have to do
28th.
it, so.
It's my birthday.
Use the 28th as the other one.
26th and 28th.
What's that, Ted?
It's your birthday, Ken?
That's my birthday, the 28th.
Oh,
Good day.
we didn't say the 20th.
26th would probably be out for most people, I'm assuming, the day after
That didn't make
Christmas.
the calendar, so.
The 11th I'm out, I'm not gonna be, well,
19th?
Is the 21st open, you said?
I can't do the 19th.
I would try for 21st.
sorry, 21st it is,
I can do 21.
I can do 21.
Okay,
I can do 21.
very good. 21st it is.
Should at least try to carry some of this stuff
Now,
out.
where's that,
Reach out
at
to-
Town Hall or the library?
Here.
Here, I don't know the dates that the library's available.
I just had it, zoning board's the 14th, I think, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And the planning board only has one meeting this month.
So even though it's gonna be a special meeting, it's gonna be a special meeting in executive session?
Correct, we open, right, we go right into executive.
Okay,
So someone could come, just for us to call the order and then walk out.
So,
okay.
so you're having a special meeting on the 21st.
Inviting
You have Stephen,
Maria.
John Hughes,
Yep.
Mhm.
Maria,
Okay.
and, just for that executive session.
Yeah.
Unless we throw something else in there.
Right, as of right now, I think that should be it, but if we have something else that pops up in the interim, I think that's gonna be a weighty issue by itself.
Well, it's certainly a lot of work,
Hmm.
for pieces of it.
21 December, Town Hall, 7.
Correct.
7 PM, or 1900 hours, 7 PM National Guard time, okay.
With Zulu time.
Mhm. That's my idea, so I'll bring the Christmas pizza.
More attractive.
Wow.
Scotch.
Excellent.
I'll bring
Communications. I'm sorry, is there anything else anybody wants to speak on, other executive or other administrative? All right, so communications, we've covered most of them. Number 11 was pulled. Has it been discussed yet, Frank?
No, it has not. I just want to refer to the communication we got from Representative Price and the dates that you all received on that, and I just thought it should be made known of what those dates are.
Well, tell me.
Everybody pretty much left, but
Well, we got a camera.
yes, that's true, so we can read that. Let me look it up again. One second.
By the way, while we're waiting for Frank to find his document, the town hall looks really well, the way you decorated it.
It's looking good.
Like
Looks
that.
very festive.
Very festive, right, Ted?
So I think we all got the letter from the Rhode Island DOT that essentially gives us the notification of the dates that Representative Price notified us of. So there's one in Richmond at Clark Memorial Library. Let's see. Well, it's not specifically a meeting, it's, let's see. Available for review and download on the following Rhode Island DOT website. Reference copies of the LDEA will be available for public review beginning November 6th. And the locations will be Hopkinton Ashaway Free Library, Exeter Public Library, Richmond, Clark Memorial Library, and Providence DOT. So. The other thing that Representative Price included in his communication, which was not from the DOT, was the memorandum, which essentially explains the tolling project and the road works and the locations. So, do you know if the town has taken did the town take a specific position as to whether they?
When they first proposed tolling, we, what do you call it? We wrote a letter to the state arguing that we were opposed to tolling and enumerating our reasons why we were opposed to it.
Okay.
Still have.
Okay.
But I think we joined with several other communities that are opposing tolls.
All right.
Next, you had pulled number 31.
Yeah, we already took care of 30, which was the appointments to the alternates to the.
Yep.
And I also pulled 31, which was the letter from the planning board member, Mr. Di Gregorio, regarding the alleged violation of Exeter Code of Conduct and Conduct Policy of Councilman Patterson. So, I find this document very interesting, the amount of time that he spent putting this together, or whomever he had drafted for him. I will also say that many of these things that are on here, I don't see that there's any conclusive proof at all that any of these things have been done, other than Mr. Di Gregorio's opinion himself. Now, besides that, I think what we're talking about here is an issue of more of a private email than a public email, if I'm not mistaken.
My thought was on this, that it would respond to Mr. Di Gregorio, say that the letter you referenced was a private communication between two citizens, and therefore is not subject to any Open Meetings Act communique. It is outside of the realm of the town council.
I agree.
Yeah. They put it bluntly, just it's a letter between two private citizens.
He makes some
I'll-
pretty
I'll-
outrageous claims in there, trying to find, which is, I have been lying all the times, the authorized representative, which is, it's in here somewhere. Wanting to know if I got authorization from the council to send this email. Do I need permission to call my friends from guys? And the one thing I should have said tonight, I know Ray did when you were council president, and Lynn, they could not find any resolution from the town council authorizing him to be the representative for Rolling Greens. This was the only one proposing amendments to the North Kingston Comprehensive Plan. These have all been passed or tabled. This was done years ago. And he's basing the fact that he's the representative based on this resolution. So I think a letter needs sent to him telling him that you are the authorized representative for Rolling Greens. No ifs, ands, or buts. Because something with their future land use map was changed with their comp plan. The water service area map was changed. And he's opposing the amendments to their comp plan, which has been approved, done in 2014.
The other thing I don't remember, Mr. President, is that as Councilman Patterson said in public comment in his rebuttal about him being the duly authorized representative of the Exeter Planning Board, I don't recall ever seeing anything from the planning board actually designating him. Is that true or not true? Are you aware?
I think,
Or did he take that upon himself to be the representative?
No, I think the planning board.
Do they have a formal vote?
Have to go back.
but I think that goes back to the letter that we'll be speaking about briefly in executive,
Right,
going back to who can designate
exactly,
and just now eliminating that.
right.
Because the night of this meeting, August 28th, me and Ray were there, Calvin was there, and he comes storming up to us and he's screaming at me and Ray that he is the authorized representative, and I'm telling him, no, you're not, Mr. McGovern is, and that's why me and him didn't speak. We're not the authorized representatives. And when I told him he needed to understand chain of command, he got really upset and stormed away.
So I think at this point, we just send them a letter saying that it was a private letter, who the author, and then say the authorized person is myself. And that's it, just keep it nice and
He
simple.
needs to be told who is the authorized representative.
Something in writing, that's good. Something in writing, we'll get a paper. Good.
All right, very
I'll make
good.
a motion that we send a letter to Mr. DiGregorio, referencing his letter saying that the communication he references is a private communication between two citizens, and we do not feel that it violates any code of conduct. And secondly, that the only authorized person to speak on the Ron Grange project is the council president.
A second.
Any further discussion?
Am I allowed to vote on this?
Yes.
If I were you, I'd get the licensed solicitor, but if I were you.
Well, this is what I say. There are 4 people here, 3 is a majority. I would recuse on it.
I will abstain.
Okay. Therefore, I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we have 1 abstention.
Fine.
Recusal.
Fine.
Who's the one?
I think you abstain, just abstain.
Abstain, good.
For my alleged behavior.
All right, lastly, all the other communications have been discussed except number 14. I had pulled that one. It is a check donation from the Southern New England truck pullers to the Exeter Food Bank. They have their truck pull over at Reynolds Field every year. They do a couple And then after each event, they do give a donation back to the food bank, so just thanking them for that donation as well.
They're just taking that money to pay their insurance and giving it all.
I think, yeah, I think it's good time fun.
It's just happy to have a venue and happy to have the event.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. Moving on to executive session, I think we will be going under A.
I haven't.
Okay.
Talk about it.
All right, so do you guys do this one as well?
No.
All right, so B and C, we'll be going in, unless anybody else has anything else they wish to discuss?
Happy birthday, Ted.
Hey, not yet, hang on.
I'll make a motion.
You throwing me out now?
Yeah. All in favor?
Good to see your wife, I haven't seen her in a long time.
Wow,
Is she still teaching?
yep, she just started teaching at CCLA. She got a
Oh, was
full-time-
she?
full-time professor job.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Oh, no, I'll see you.
Yeah, we're gonna,